Thank you. Thanks, Jen. And I hope everyone can see the slides in front of you. I want to thank you, Jen, for having me and the Southeast AIDS Education and Training Center, as well as the Tennessee AIDS Education and Training Center, and Choices for hosting me, which is physically where I'm sitting right now. So thank you all. The session that you are about to be involved in, the agenda is in front of you. And I just want to let everyone know that there's a little something in this session for everyone. Whether you are a seasoned FC2 educator and you could probably do this session yourself, or whether maybe you learned a little bit about female condoms in the mid-90s, but you haven't really circled back, you're not sure what the new one's made out of, so there's something in this session for you. Or if you're completely new to female condoms, there's definitely something in the session for you. So we know that all of you come to this session with a toolbox filled with tools already. We hope to sharpen some of those tools and to add others. So thanks for being here today. Let's start with a little bit of the female condom. What is it? Now, if this were a live session, this is the point that I would have you get out the FC2 and feel it and touch it and smell it and really get to know this product. And like I said, whether it's a product that you see every day or one that you haven't opened and gotten intimate with in a while, no pun intended. So this slide is really the mechanics of what providers want to know about the FC2. We are latex-free. We're made of nitrile. It's a nitrile sheath with an outer ring and an inner ring. Nitrile, as many of you know, is 3 times stronger than latex, but it is thinner than latex, so it can have a more natural feeling. We come lubricated with a really high-quality silicone lubricant. It's not sticky or tacky. It's quite smooth and nice. There are no additives, no spermicide. For many for whom it's important, we are gluten-free and non-allergenic. We are indicated and approved by the FDA for the prevention of pregnancy and STIs, including HIV. And as you can see at the bottom, there are some specifics regarding the FDA. We're classified as a Class 3 medical device. And something we'll get to more later is it can be inserted, FC2 can be inserted in advance. So this is kind of the slide regarding the mechanics. And like I said, this is usually where I would have you open a package and get out an FC2 and really get comfortable with it, which I would suggest if you haven't done in a while, go ahead and do it after this session. The next slide speaks really more to the benefits. I was talking with a colleague recently from the Virginia Department of Health, where I was affiliated for years, and she said to me, yeah, I've had a career in sales. And I kind of chuckled because I know that she's worked in public health her entire career. And then she said, well, I've been selling public health. I've been selling decision-making. I've been selling harm reduction. I've been selling smoking cessation. And I thought, you know, she has a point. We really are selling good health, or we're selling harm reduction. So the next couple of slides really speak to that. Yes, they're the mechanics of the FC2. What is it made of? How do you insert it? But what are the real benefits? What are you going to sit down with your client and your patient and talk with him or her about? And the next 2 slides really speak to some of those benefits. So as I mentioned, it is non-hormonal. There's a lot of research that's coming out that women are looking for non-hormonal options for contraception. If you look at the research, women spend 3 decades trying to prevent pregnancy. And in those 3 decades, chances are they're not going to use the entire method to prevent pregnancy for all 30 years. They're going to want to mix it up a little bit, depending on where they are in their lives. So this is a non-hormonal, latex-free device that offers dual protection. It has the silicone-based lubricant that we talked about. That's another benefit. A big benefit that we're very proud of, it is a woman-controlled device. It's something that a woman has control over, and she doesn't have to have a really long, oh, baby, will you please wear a condom conversation because she's wearing it. It is a great option for people with latex sensitivities. Continuing with the sales, the patient-centered benefits. As I mentioned, it's a great option for women who have difficulty or discomfort negotiating condom use. And it also, we'll get more into this a little bit later, but it is now 100% reimbursable as a contraceptive method under the Affordable Care Act. So when you look at these two slides, it would be so silly of me to say, oh, these are definitely the talking points that you want to give to your clients, because you know your clientele way better than I do. And in fact, maybe what you tell patient X is a benefit of FC2 that you know is going to really resonate for him or her is different than what you'll tell patient Y. But regardless of what your selling points are, no one can argue with pleasure. Everyone wants pleasure, no matter who they are. So the next few slides, and I'm telling you, I had 4 slides on pleasure, and I thought you all would really talk about me, so I cut it down to 2, but I really could say more about the pleasure positive benefits of FC2. They are listed here, and again, they're very client-centered. So I always like to tell the story about back in the late 90s when I was working in higher education at the time, and I had a college student come in, and he said, every time I put a male condom on, I lose an erection, so I end up not using anything at all. So a client-centered, pleasure-positive counseling session with that individual was, well, why don't you try the FC2? Because you're not wearing it. It's not constricting on the penis. Your partner's wearing it, not you. There was something going on there. Who knows what it was? Stigma, alcohol, shame, inexperience, but for whatever reason, he was unable to maintain an erection with a male condom on. And the female condom was a great option for him and his partner. So going to this list, like I said, FC2 is made of nitrile. It warms the body temperature so it can feel more natural. The external ring has been known to accidentally, this is not FDA proven, accidentally provide clitoral stimulation, which can increase pleasure for a woman. There aren't many women who are going to argue against clitoral stimulation. And it doesn't, the FC2, again, she's wearing it, not her partner. So when a male ejaculates, if he's wearing a male condom, he has to withdraw right away and remove the male condom. With the female condom, she's wearing it, not him. So they can stay in, they can cuddle a little while, a few minutes or seconds, talk about whatever they want, and then it can be removed. The FC2 can be inserted ahead of time. With the first generation female condom, it was up to 8 hours. With FC2, it's up to 2 hours. Not saying it can't be inserted up to 8 hours, but we just didn't test it for that. We tested it for up to 2 hours because women reported to us they didn't insert it up to 8 hours. They tended to insert it up to 2 hours. So that's as far as we went with the study that we presented to the FDA. And insertion can be incorporated into foreplay. Use the outer ring or use the inner ring, which is made of polyurethane and has a little toughness to it. Use that to stimulate the clitoris before inserting. So there are more pleasure-positive benefits. As I already mentioned, it's not constricting on the penis. It does not interrupt spontaneity. She can insert it 20 minutes or 2 minutes before so that they don't have to stop their foreplay to put on a condom. The inner ring has been reported to stimulate the penis, the frenulum. And in addition, the FC2 can be used with water or oil-based lubricant because it is made of nitrile, not latex. So the lubricant that one uses can be either oil or water. And for some, this is a very pleasure-positive aspect because they love their coconut butter or olive oil. And lastly, the point here is hugely important for gentlemen. Men do not have to have or maintain an erection to use FC2. Some men, regardless of their age, might lose their erection in the middle of sex, and instead of having to withdraw and take off a condom, again, she's wearing the condom, not him, so he can keep going until the erection comes back. So we've talked about benefits, we've talked about pleasure. Let's talk about the why. Why FC2? So you're sitting out there and you're listening in on this early morning with your cup of coffee and you're thinking, this sounds really great, it sounds sexy, It's effective in serving as a dual protective method, but how am I going to argue that the monies are put aside? How am I going to carve out funding from my condom budget to purchase FC2? And here are 3 points that are hugely important in making that argument to the decision makers of the budget. The one at the very bottom is simply FC2 is effective. In the FDA safety and efficacy studies, FC2 was found 95% effective as a barrier contraceptive. If you look at some other studies that have been done, that percentage has been as high as 98%, and I put the references for those studies at the bottom of the slide. Another interesting study that was done in the District of Columbia is just pointing out the return on investment. You want a return on an investment, whether you're an AIDS service organization or an NGO or a health department. And this study that was done out of Johns Hopkins University really points to that. Female condom program in Washington, D.C. Showed that for basically every dollar that was spent on FC2, $15 or $20 was saved and by preventing HIV or unplanned pregnancy. And that citation is there as well so that you can check it out. So there is a return on your investment. They made the calculation after comparing the cost of a condom program with the potential cost of the HIV infections it prevented. And it was, again, for every dollar spent on FC2, $15 to $20 was saved for the District of Columbia. The study at the very top is fascinating and something that providers are always interested in. These were studies that showed that when female condoms are infused into condom distribution programming, not only does the use of female condoms go up, that's sort of job, now it's presented as an option, but male condom use goes up. So we're all kind of scratching our heads like, male condoms were offered already. You offered female condoms as an option, and now they both go up in terms of protected sex acts. We're not really sure. The researchers aren't really sure. The only thing that we can conclude as behavioral scientists is that the conversation increased, therefore the use of protection increased. So you could certainly make the argument that by presenting FC2 side by side with male condoms, it could increase the number of overall protected sex acts. Third-party coverage. This slide is very, very exciting for us. The FC2 female condom is now covered 100% as a contraceptive method under the Affordable Care Act. Now, the Affordable Care Act has been out for a couple of years, and a lot of providers are just hearing about FC2 coverage, and that's because providers weren't really sure. Under ACA, it said contraceptive was 100% covered, but which contraception methods are covered? And April of 2015, a specific list was released by HHS, and on that list, FC2 is listed. In addition, Medicaid programs are required to cover family planning. Of course, you know this varies by state. As my colleague in Chicago says, if you've met one Medicaid service, you've only met one Medicaid service. They do vary by state. So what you have to do is check with your state Medicaid agency to determine what the FC2 payout is. These two handouts that you are looking at on the slide in front of you are two handouts that have been created to help you figure out FC2 billing. The one on the right was created by us, the Female Health Company, and on this handout, there's information on FC2 under the Affordable Care Act, how to write a sample prescription, et cetera. The one on the left was created by our colleagues at NCSD, National Coalition of SD Directors, and NIFRA, National Family Planning and Reproductive Health Association. It is a fact sheet on female condom billing, and it has coding on it, sample prescription, how to determine the best way to get FC2 covered for your patient as a contraceptive method, 100% covered by health insurance. So those two handouts are on our website, and I really invite you to check those out. The URL is there, or you can always email me after the slide presentation. So a few challenges, FC2 challenges. I'm guessing if you're on this call, there is great interest on your part to either include FC2 in your condom distribution program, or if you already include it, perhaps you'd like to augment that. And so if you're on this call, you probably already know these challenges. The first one is really FC2 education and awareness, people knowing about it, hearing about it, knowing how to use it, knowing proper insertion. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. The second one is limited access to FC2. This continues to be a problem ever since we were FDA approved in the mid-90s. Even with the Affordable Care Act, we're still seeing a lot of challenges in accessibility. And the third one is expense. If you didn't know, we are more expensive than a male condom. If you did know, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. So the first challenge, I feel like we are all over this as a company, and that's FC2 education and outreach for providers. This is really, we have an entire department that's all we do is provide FC2 education to providers. An example is what I'm doing today, participating in this webinar. We really want every provider, every educator to be what we call FC2 confident. Because when providers are FC2 confident and they talk about FC2 with their patients and their clients walk away FC2 confident and knowing how to use FC2 with confidence in their lives. So here are some examples of, we're sort of all over the place. We partner with local aid service organizations, community-based organizations, public health clinics, and local school districts around the U.S. And we accept invitations constantly to do trainings and webinars. We've also partnered with national organizations. I already mentioned two, NIFRA and NCSC, because these national organizations have access to hundreds of organizations around the U.S. And so we partner with national organizations so that they can help us get the word out about FC2. We do on-site, in-person FC2 provider trainings, which is why I'm here in Memphis. I'm doing a couple of those organized by Choices. Again, thank you for that. And we are constantly exhibiting at conferences. I think in the month of April, we have 10 conferences where we're exhibiting and talking to providers. Lastly, for people who are not able to come to a conference and meet us in person or be the recipient of one of the in-person provider trainings, we have a free online training, and you can see the URL for that at the bottom. So we're working really hard to train providers, and I have to say providers are extremely open to this, and it does make a difference. So recently we conducted a survey of providers who had been through our FC2 training, and this was a live training that they had been through. And 70% of the providers indicated that they were more likely to talk to patients about FC2 and prescribe FC2, having attended one of our FC2 training events. So it really helps to have that personal touch, and another reason why I'm grateful to have this opportunity today. So let's see if we can keep moving forward so that providers and customers are FC2 confident. Customer education. So this comes from you. For those of you in the community, you've been saying to us, you know, we get the FC2, we open them up, we get out the FDA insert, and it is snooze city. The FDA insert is not exciting, it's not colorful, it has no bling on it. It's sort of like a bare aspirin insert, and that's okay. That's what FDA is doing. They're just getting out efficacy information. So we've created our own educational materials, and you see the sample of two in front of you. And these are on our website. You can download and print them for free, or you can contact me after the session, and I am happy to send you as many copies as you need, because these handouts speak to customers. They're bright. They're attractive. They have sexy tips to how you can spice up your sex life, and that's not something that you'll find on the FDA insert. when you receive the box. So please let me know if you are in need of any customer education. Another thing that we have done is we created a new FC2 instructional video. This was a request that came from you, the providers. You wanted something that was user-friendly, attractive, that you could show in the waiting room, you could show directly to FC2 users, or either you could show to maybe your nurse practitioners who are coming in for a clinical rotation and they want to know about the FC2. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and play our new FC2 instructional video, which is downloadable on our website.
Make FC2 the only FDA-approved and WHO-approved female condom a part of your everyday intimacy to keep your sex life happy and healthy. Made of nitrile, which warms to your body temperature and feels natural, the FC2 is a latex-free, non-hormonal contraceptive. The FC2 is a safe option for protection against unintended pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections, including HIV, which may enhance the pleasure potential for both of you. The FC2 is easy to use with practice and can be placed before intimacy begins. Before use, check the expiration date printed on the seam of each condom package. Then, massage the package between your hands, spreading the silicone-based lubricant. Carefully open the package by tearing down from the notch on the top. The inner ring of the FC2 is at the closed end of the female condom. To place the FC2, hold the inner ring, squeezing it with your thumb and middle finger so it becomes long and narrow. Get into a comfortable position. Push the inner ring all the way back behind the pubic bone over the cervix. Once placed, the FC2 should feel comfortable. It should not hurt or cause discomfort. If it does, remove the condom and start over with a new condom. When initiating intercourse, hold the outer ring of the FC2 in place to prevent it from sliding inside the vagina. After intercourse and before standing up, remove the condom by twisting the outer ring once, then pull out the condom and throw it away.
Great. Okay, I'm back on. For a few of you, we did see a message that you were not able to see the video, but I assure you it's on our website. It's easily downloadable, and you can watch it there. If you can't find the link on our website, please email me after the session today, and I'm happy to send you a direct link. So let's talk a little bit about that challenge of accessibility. I'll try to see if I can keep my blood pressure down while I'm talking about it. We are hearing stories, a lot of stories, weekly actually, about providers who are indeed prescribing the FC2 for contraception. They're delighted that it's an option and they're prescribing. And then the patient goes to the pharmacy and her experience is not very successful. So either the pharmacist is not aware that there is a female condom, or the pharmacist is not aware that it's covered by ACA, or the pharmacist cannot find it in his or her system to order it. So what we have remedied the challenge of the pharmacist not being able to find it in the system. It is now on the registry for all pharmacists. They can easily find it just like they can any pharmacological intervention at this point. So we've remedied that. We have not yet remedied the challenge of the pharmacist being uninformed about the product or it being covered by ACA. To be empathetic and sensitive, pharmacists have to keep thousands of pharmacological interventions straight, and they cannot be knowledgeable about all of them. So before you get angry at me, let me just tell you, we need your help in order to do more. The only success that we are finding with 100% success is when a provider visits the pharmacy, speaks to the pharmacist, takes the fact sheet that either NIFRA and NCSD created or we created, taking the fact sheet that clearly states it's covered by ACA, here's the coding, Here's the reimbursement information. This is how you order it in your system. When the provider goes and has a face-to-face with the pharmacist, we have so far seen 100% success in that pharmacist being willing to order it. So this is work on you, and you probably will be angry at me, but I promise that your patients will be the beneficiaries of this intervention. And I thank you in advance for doing that advocacy at a local level. For users of FC2 who are not candidates for contraceptive use, or they don't want to use it for contraception, but they do want to get FC2, they can easily, more easily than ever, order it online and have it delivered discreetly to their door. And you can see the slide in front of you are all of the online stores that provide FC2. We are also, I'm happy to say, in over 8 times more brick-and-mortar stores than we were just 4 months ago. So, again, you would have to check the pharmacy in your area, but that is growing, and we're very happy to say that. If you happen to experience success with a pharmacist, please email me and let me know, because we would like to hear more success stories. In staying with the theme of pharmacy shelves, this slide here, the box on the left, is the FC2 3-pack, and the suggested retail for that 3-pack is $5.99 per box. So this is how the FC2 would look on the pharmacy shelf or the Walgreens contraceptive or condom shelf. The one on the right is the individual FC2 sachet. When nonprofits or anyone in the public sector orders a box of 100 or 1,000, they come in individual sachets, and that's how it would look. I have the note at the top, FC1 to FC2, lower the cost. When we, and we were also the manufacturers of the FC1, which some of you might have known as the reality condom, that was made of polyurethane. Polyurethane is more expensive than nitrile. So when we went for FDA approval of FC2, we went for it and changed the product from polyurethane to nitrile, which then lowered the cost. It did not lower the efficacy. It did not lower the pleasure. If anything, it increased the pleasure, and it got rid of the squeak at the same time. Since also polyurethane caused the squeak that some of you might have heard about in the mid-90s, and it wasn't a sexy squeak either. So from FC1 to FC2, you have the same great product, even better, but the cost was lowered. So let me just speak candidly here about the cost. Yes, we are more expensive than male condoms. That's really what this slide should be called. We are more expensive than male condoms. The FC2 includes more material than the male condom. We have an inner ring and an outer ring. So when there's more material, there's going to be more cost. But I hope that I've provided slides today that help you make the argument that while the cost is more, the benefit or the return on your investment is worth it. We save lives, we save communities, we give women and men options so that they have more options instead of less. And we're 95% effective as a dual protective method. And as I indicated in one of the other slides, we save communities money by giving them options for protection. So what I'd like to do now is give you a sneak preview into some consumer research that we've been doing. The first, and this way you don't have to do your own needs assessment. We've done it for you, and this can help you with some of your messaging back home. There are 2 studies that we did. First one is a series of multiple focus groups with different age women across the U.S. who had never used FC2, but they were willing to. And the second study that we did was of women who identify that they are currently FC2 users. And I'm going to show you some of the data from those 2 studies. This one is from the focus group. Again, as a reminder, these are women who had never used FC2, but they were totally willing to. And why is this slide important? Well, this slide is important because it's important for all of us to know our consumers and our clients. What are women thinking about FC2? What are women thinking about FC2 who have never used it? Well, they're thinking this. What will it feel like? How easy will it be to insert? Will it fall out? Et cetera. Every single concern listed here can be solved with what? It can be solved with education, and that falls on the providers and the health educators. And if you notice at the bottom, it sort of speaks to what I was saying, how most women spend 30 years of their life trying to avoid pregnancy. So why are you interested in trying something new? Well, it's something new, and I'm curious. But a lot of women said they wanted to try it because it's something in their control. So if you look at the slide, these are all things that you could cover in your communities with one hand tied behind your back. You so have this. It's just education about the product that is missing. That is what is keeping women from trying the FC2. So this is a compilation from both studies, actually, the women who had never tried it before, but then they did try it, and the women who were longtime FC2 users. What were the likes and the dislikes? And you can see that they're listed here. A lot of what women were looking for at the top of the list was female controlled. And you can see the others listed there: latex-free, pleasure, feels natural, easy, dual protection. Dislikes, where to buy, and limited availability, which we discussed is a challenge, and we're hoping that all of you are willing to help us with. This is also a compilation of both studies. What are customers saying? So after they try the FC2, what are their responses? And again, at the top of the list for women, it's about something that allows me to take control of my own protection. That's hugely important, and it's our responsibility to offer that to women. It's effective as a contraception. And you can see pleasure is about halfway there down the middle. And again, I'm presenting this so that you can take it into account when you're talking with clients and developing messages. We hope that these slides will be helpful to you. The last slide, I always like people to know that you may feel sometimes in public health like you're going it alone, and you're not. You are part of a worldwide effort, actually, in FC2 outreach, and I really want you to see this video, which shows that you are, you may be in, I don't know where you are in the Southeast right now sitting, but you're really part of a sisterhood and brotherhood worldwide. Take a look at this video.
The Female Health Company has been on the front lines, dedicated to providing a life-saving reproductive tool that empowers women. For over 20 years, we have led the way in creating and developing the female condom. It is the only one approved by the World Health Organization and the U.S. FDA. With 430 million condoms distributed in more than 140 countries worldwide, we are committed to the quality and safety of our products. We believe women should have control over their own bodies, and our condom protects against sexually transmitted infections and unintended pregnancies. But proper use can't happen without education and training. So we are working with nonprofits, ministries of health, UN, and NGO partners around the world to create one of the most extensive female condom education programs. By improving the health of women, we are contributing to society as a whole. When women are healthy, their partners, families, and entire communities thrive. Our story is broad, and there is so much more we are about to show you. So please, stay tuned.
Thank you. I saw a few more messages that some folks weren't able to see the video. Again, if you send me an email message, I can send you the link. It's quite lovely. It shows colleagues in Central and South America and Sub-Saharan Africa and Europe and the U.S. all doing amazing FC2 outreach. So thank you all for having me today and for listening in. And now I'm going to hand the baton to Nicole.
Hi, folks. I'm going to let the IT folks kind of get the slide set switched out, I think. I think they're going to do that. So as soon as I see my slide set come up, we will start. Great. There. Thank you again for introducing the session, Jen, and we'll just get right into it. So I will say that, like so many presentations I do, I really am so grateful and appreciative of all of the help we get from both CTEC, by Choices, who supports both being a provider, but also having the opportunity to go out and work with other providers with training. I had a wonderful intern from Rhodes. Rhodes provides a lot of students to us here at Choices who do their community hours. And of course, Katie, who is the coordinator extraordinaire of many things in our life here at Choices. I don't have any financial disclosures. I am doing this in conjunction with the FC2 group, but we don't have any financial ties at this time. All right, so let's just get right down to what the FDA says. So one of the reasons that I'm speaking about the anal sex component of female condoms is because of this statement. So basically, neither male condoms nor female condoms are FDA approved for use with anal sex. That being said, we, for many of us who are providers and working with our communities and hearing from them, we know that folks out there certainly participate in anal sex and that they are all looking for ways to be safe and to reduce their risk and their partner's risk for transmission of STIs and transmission of HIV. Okay, so let's just talk for just a second why one of the background reasons that female condoms and male condoms, in fact, may not have been able to get FDA approval is tied to anti-sodomy laws. So, you know, until really, so in 1961, all 50 states had anti-sodomy laws, and in fact, there were still many, more than half of the states in the U.S. had anti-sodomy laws right up until 2003. In 2003, there was a U.S. Supreme Court decision that invalidated the remaining state anti-sodomy laws because they applied to behavior between consenting adults who were civilians and doing this in their own private time. As it turns out, most relationships happen. That's important when we talk about whether the FDA is approving it. It's also important when we talk about what research has been done and what research was possible to be done. Certainly, if something is illegal, it makes it awfully difficult to assess whether it's happening and assess potential interventions for it. All right, but regardless of the fact that it was, in fact, against the law in many states, our National Health Survey goes on every 2 years. This is a survey of 15 to 44-year-olds across the U.S. They try to base it on population, and they have found consistently over several years that anal sex for males, about 40% of males participating acknowledge that they have participated in anal sex at some point in their life, and about 35%. So, you know, somewhere around a third of individuals, even close to a half, if you're looking at those male participants, have at some point in their life participated in anal sex. All right, so how are we getting these numbers? So this is kind of interesting to me in the sense that that National Survey of Family Growth has slightly tweaked the questions a little bit. So you can see in 2006 to 2008, the questions were the same as the 2002 data. But in 2011 to 2013, they did add some keywords down there under the male respondents. They asked specifically about receptive versus insertive. However, the numbers at the end of the day, they still group those together. So if they said yes to either of those things, they still get counted as an individual who identifies participating in anal sex. And by the way, that 40% for males and 35% for females is actually very consistent over time. So the 2006-2008 data, which was published in 2011, pretty much just very similar numbers, 36% of women, 44% of men. The most recent data, which was published just here in January 2016, which is the survey questions were asked 2011 through 2013. Again, 35.9% of women, 42.3% of men. So pretty consistent across, more than a decade now of looking at U.S. population. In our MSM population, again, now this slide particularly I think is kind of tricky to understand. So this also comes from that National Survey of Family Growth, and it's only identifying individuals who identify as having ever had same-sex sexual activity with another male, so males who identify as sleeping with other males. And what this data shows is that overall, it's a small percentage of the population in general. However, I'm switching slides here. Some other data that we get when we look at studies specifically looking at only MSM populations. So this was a survey of 235 males who presented to a major Midwestern public health clinic. They had to be 18 years or older and English speaking. But this looks at, within the MSM population, what sort of sexual activities are happening. And certainly unprotected anal sex, more than 90% of the individuals, either unprotected or protected, more than 90% of the individuals who identified as MSM said yes, this was part of their normal sexual practices at some point in their life. When we think about whether or not people are using condoms, the data that came from Indiana University in their 2009 population-based study, this one looked at a little wider age range. So one of the disadvantages of the Family Behavioral Growth Survey is that it only goes from 15-year-old to 44. Well, we know that people are having sex long after the age of 44. That's sort of a random number. We're sorry about the background. We are here at Choices. We're right on Poplar, and so sometimes traffic. So if you're hearing sirens, it's just the traffic going by. So in 2009, Indiana University conducted a population-based study. They did look at a broader age range. And not only that, they got some more in-depth questions answered about whether or not condoms were being used. Unfortunately, as you can see from these numbers, almost no population even had half of anal sex episodes that they were reporting. So only in the gay male population was there any consistency with using condoms for anal sex. And one particular population, and you see this in more than one study, although the number of studies is fairly small, in the bisexual population, so individuals who self-identify as bisexual, if it's a male bisexual having anal intercourse with a female partner, this population particularly consistently reports, even though it's a small population, consistently reports that they're simply not using any kind of protection to protect that female partner. when they're having anal intercourse specifically. And you'll see that in more than one study, and it's an unfortunate statistic, and it's certainly one that we have some work to do in. Another population we have a lot of work to do in is the transgender population. So there has been one fairly recent study in 2008 by Herbst and colleagues who looked at specific to HIV and risk behaviors in the transgender, trying to get some of that sort of similar survey type information. None of the surveys I've spoken about up to now address transgender specific population at all. All right, so what are our risks associated, and why is anal sex considered so risky? What's the big deal here? Some studies have said that for individuals with receptive anal intercourse, there's about 3.4% per act increase. I'm sorry, this is not increased as compared to vaginal intercourse. The 3.4% is an absolute risk per act of anal intercourse. You can see that that's certainly greater than vaginal intercourse risk per act. Other STIs that we know can be spread are gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, herpes, of course, since it's mostly skin to skin, and then trichomoniasis. You know, the problem with that is there's very limited testing available for that for males in the first place, and then for anal specimens, that is also difficult. What kind of statistics do we get? So if we do urethral and rectal as well as pharyngeal swabs for gonorrhea and chlamydia, you can see here that the rectal and pharyngeal swabs for both chlamydia and gonorrhea are quite significant and pretty much right on par with what we see in urethral. So one, we should probably be testing all areas. So if an individual identifies that they have oral, anal, and either penile and vagina intercourse, you should be really swabbing those. We've seen again and again data showing us that just collecting the urine, even though it's more convenient, is not truly capturing all the data and likely missing quite a few infections. All right, so why is this? Well, there's a couple of reasons, and this is sort of an interesting slide for me. One is just the sheer anatomy. So we have a different type of skin cells that line the anal and rectal area. I'll talk about that a little more in detail. The anus sphincter is stronger than the vaginal sphincter. So it's more stiff per se. And so going through it may cause damage to that fragile mucosa. There have been a few studies that have looked at the roughness of the activity. So is anal sex compared to, for example, anal fisting? Which one is more risky? But then there's this other special caveat to looking at data regarding STI and risk associated with anal sex, and it's that there are serious confounding issues with the research. So a lot of these studies are only done in high-risk populations. There's very few studies actually done. Many of the studies actually do not separate out protected versus unprotected. And then many of the studies actually only base the report of STI from the participant as opposed to actually clinical correlation of an STI. So that leads everyone who's looking closely at this research to say, well, how true is this data? I said that I would speak just a minute to that skin. So it turns out that indeed the vaginal skin is lined with, our squamous epithelium. The anal skin is lined with this much more fragile columnar epithelial. And that skin is just more fragile to damage. That certainly has been proposed as a reason that anal sex and other anal sexual activities could be more risky. All right, so let's talk about anal sex in the female condom. So one, there's, like I mentioned, really very few studies on this. And in fact, if you'll notice, so this article in 2003 was that first year, if you remember, that anti-sodomy laws were officially banned by the Supreme Court. Also, 2003 was when the FC2 was approved. These two other studies, Gibson and Gross in 1999, one, anti-sodomy laws were in place. Two, those were with the first version of the female condom. So Judy talked about some of the fixes that the F2C did in regards to sort of some initial complaints. So Gibson and Gross, although they looked at, and we'll look at their data a little more in depth, they looked at survey data about familiarity and willingness to use and problems associated with use of the female condom, and that was with the first version, and some of that data matched very similarly the problems that were reported with vaginal use. And no studies have really been done since then to reevaluate that same data with the newer version of the FC2, which is unfortunate. So, back in 1999, Gross did a survey looking at who was aware of female condoms within the MSM population. This was a little over 2,000 HIV seronegative men. They did do it from 6 cities around the U.S. Participants had to have identified that they had had anal intercourse with at least one other male within the past year. As you can see, a large percentage, about half, had actually been familiar with it, but a pretty small percentage had used it within the last 6 months. So just a little over 10% there. Kelvin tried to do an update of some of that data in 2011. This was a much smaller population, so only 111, so 100 folks, within the New York City. Again, these are high-risk populations. These are individuals that were presenting and clients of an HIV/AIDS organization. Pretty small number had, so just about 20%, so a little improvement over 10%, doubled over a decade's time, had actually used used the female condom for an anal sex experience. Of those who had used the female condom, again, this is where I was talking about for the bisexual individuals, in their female partners, much less likely to use it than with their male partners, which is really quite unfortunate. Waltiski in 2001, again, about 250 males. However, these were very high-risk individuals, and mostly doing a survey, again, of sort of, have you heard about it, have you used it? And again, this was before the current FC2 condom was released. However, for what it's worth, these different studies did find some pretty common themes related to friction, slippage, and potentially more damage. So let's talk about what kind of more damage that could be. 1999 growth in that large survey, these were the problems that individuals identified in using the female condom for anal sex. I'm going to come back to this slide. And then Gibson, also in 1999, very similar kind of problems. Breakage was, 3 out of 334 uses, so, about 1%. And Renzi, though, in 2003, did find that, now Renzi did something interesting. He not only asked for participant feedback, but he also actually took biopsies of the anal epithelium and did a clinical evaluation of how damaged was the epithelium after anal sex. And he did do a comparison of male and female condoms. One, there was epithelial damage with anal intercourse. However, there was not significant difference in the epithelial damage of males versus female condoms. So that's definitely supportive that this might not be as risky as we have supposed or assumed. Just to recap, the research now, is all being done in very small populations, very high-risk populations. And although some researchers have certainly supported that the female condom is better than nothing, there are very few tests of that. What do our health departments say about using the female condom? Now, this is where it gets very confusing, both for folks who just want to find out if it's safe, and also for us as providers. So Rodriguez and colleagues, just in 2015, they did a survey of all 50 states. They looked at all 50 states' health department websites. And out of those, that there were 21 that at least mentioned the female condom in relation to anal sex. However, as you can see there, 8 of those websites support it. 13 sort of at least say that some people use it, but they don't support it or discourage it. There's at least 1 that actively discourages it. And only 10 of those sites give specific instructions on use, including either whether you should leave that inner ring in or take it out. Tennessee and Memphis actually, so Tennessee, of course, was one of the states. Memphis was one of the metropolitan areas that they looked at. So for us here locally, there was no mention of female condoms and its use with anal sex. So what can we take away from this? Despite all of this, we've got to move on, and we've got to continue to support people in what they're trying to do to prevent their risk and their partner's risk for HIV and STIs. There are a couple of organizations that say a few things. So the CDC, their message about use for anal sex is sort of neutral. They say, yes, for any sexual act, you should use a condom. They don't specifically say you should use female condoms. AIDS.org does a good job of saying basically anything you would do for vaginal sex, you would want to do for anal sex. And then they also mention on there that we want to talk about reducing your risk of spreading if you're HIV positive, and reducing your risk of acquiring using PrEP. Another really important thing that certainly when we think about the etiology here, when we think about the skin, use lube. That's the nice thing about the female condom. It comes pre-lube, but you could certainly use additional lube. And if your folks need a resource for looking at lube information, what kinds of lubes can be used, I know Judy talked about both that it comes pre-lube, but also that you can use any of the oil-based or silicone or water-based, and that's a great variability with these nitrile condoms. All of the researchers pretty much say over and over again, we've got to have more studies. This is an important health agenda, public health agenda, and that we need to be asking for rigorous population-based studies that are going to look at correct use, particularly for anal sex. Is it safe? Some comparison with the male condom. There are also many researchers that say, specifically because the female condom may make many people feel excluded, that changing the name to something that's more gender neutral might be helpful. And then once these studies are done, that we really need to get agreement between public health agencies and health departments on what we're saying and how we're saying it. And we really need to market this to folks. I want to go back just briefly. I said I'd come back to the accessibility issue. So Judy talked a lot about the increased cost. I did have a wonderful Rhodes intern went and visited and called many of our local places. So these are here in Memphis. So if you're a Memphis folks, if you're across the state of Tennessee, you may just want to check. I did personally, actually, just this week, I stopped by the Kroger on Cleveland and Poplar. So those of you who know where that is here in Memphis, I have had a great relationship with the pharmacists there. They provide a lot of great care to our population. And I took in the flyer that Judy talked about, and the pharmacist there said she's going to start stocking it, and that she would do some research on her end about trying to run it through insurance. However, I will say that I did check with our TennCare formulary, and as of right now, it's not listed as a contraceptive that's covered. So that was updated February 1st of 2016. I am not sure about our Ryan White formulary, and maybe someone else can do some of that research. All right. Finally, there are a few new things coming on the market. Origami is not released yet, but it is specifically being tested and looked at by the FDA in regards to potential use with anal sex. So there are some new things, and of course some of you are also familiar with the microbicides that have been tested, but unfortunately have not been released yet with strong supportive evidence that they're going to be effective in preventing HIV. All right. So now's a good time. If you have questions, both Judy and I are here, and we are more than happy to take questions. We're right at an hour, so I don't want to go over, and certainly we understand if people need to move on.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Judy. We really appreciate you doing this talk for us this morning. This is really good information. I know a lot of the questions that we have, this is Jen, by the way. I know a lot of the questions that we have coming in, we've answered quite a few of them just throughout the presentation, but a lot of them are kind of around how the condom is covered in different insurance settings. So I'll kind of ask them, but I know it's tough for you guys to answer these. You can't know about every single, possible option, but do we know if this condom is approved through ACA, or if any of those, will a prescription work if someone has any of the ACA plans? Do we know anything about that?
Thanks. This is Judy. So by law, FC2 is 100% reimbursable as a contraceptive method under the Affordable Care Act. And there are actually ways that if someone has a prescription for FC2, they fill it and they are not reimbursed, they can then lobby their insurance like you would for any pharmacological intervention to get reimbursed. I want to share a great website. It's called coverher.org. It's run by the Women's Law Center in Washington, D.C., and this is where you would go for any contraceptive method that you're having a challenge getting covered and you need help. It's a great website and a great advocacy organization, and it's coverher.org. And I'm going to check the URL right now to make sure I'm correct while we're taking other questions.
And that's what we'll do is we will look that up. We'll send that link along with the links for the videos out to the attendees after the webcast. We've figured out that if you're in a workplace that has a block on YouTube or some of those sites, you're probably unable to watch the video with us because of a block that your workplace might have. So we're going to send those links out so people can check those out later, and we'll send out the coverher.org as well. I wanted to know, have you heard any type of restriction on men getting prescriptions for this condom, or does it seem like only women are able to get prescriptions for this?
It's a great question, and like with anything regarding HHS, I think it's smart to say this is what we know for now. There could be another FAQ that comes out in the future. So for now, only women during a well-woman exam can be prescribed an FC2 and then have that filled and 100% covered under ACA. At this point, male condoms are not covered under ACA at this point.
Okay. And we do have someone with a hand up, Samantha Smith. we're going to unmute your mic, and if you'd like to ask your question live, we'd be happy to hear it. So, Samantha, are you there? Okay. She may have just put the hand up because she liked the presentation, and we appreciate that. We have another hand up by Dana Fike. Dana, if you can hear us, your mic has been unmuted, and you can ask your question.
Yes, I was just wondering if the slide presentation would be available to be printed off, and she said she would be sending out the link, so I'll try to do that. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, we will have the slide set and the recording of this presentation up on our website by the end of the week. We've got a couple more questions here. Has any research been done around the FC2 condom being used with the male condom? Is there issues with them being used together?
That's a great question. No double bagging. So female condoms and male condoms should not be used together. It increases friction and decreases effectiveness of both products. One or the other. And you can use one with one partner and the other one with a separate partner 2 weeks later, but not at the same time.
I will say from the anal sex research that's done, again, you know, so surveys showed that some people, so surveys from 1999, by the way, did show that some people were saying that they were using both with anal intercourse. None of the surveys or any efficacy or safety data has been looked at all in regards to anal intercourse and use of both. So we sort of have to rely on the answer that Judy provided, which is in vaginal studies, using both is not advised. So we have to assume that that's going to be true for anal.
Okay. And then you did allude to the idea that if the inner ring is removed, then there might be more risk for slippage or any issue with people that remove the ring?
Sure, that's a little bit confusing. So for leaving the ring in, the theoretical idea is that, one, the ring was designed to help anchor the female condom inside the vagina, like Judy talked about. There's clearly not a cervix. The musculature of the anus is a little bit different than the vagina. And then the other problem being is, does that inner ring, in fact, cause more damage to that mucosal skin? And, you know, unfortunately, there's nothing definitive in the research saying one way or the other. We just can say, and I think that's very clear when you look at what our public health department websites and metropolitan websites are saying. There's a lot of confusion, and you know, there's confusion because really very limited data is there to support one way or the other, and that means people are just trying to do the best they can.
Okay, and then one final question we have here. Rob is asking, can the presenters talk a little bit about the FDA classes 2 versus 3 of the female condom and versus male condoms, and what that means for other female condom types? Do you know anything about the different classes of the condoms?
Absolutely. Do you want to speak to that? I can speak to it. You can speak to it. Sure. So that's a great question, Rob. And for those of you who may not be as familiar with the FDA's classification, so male condoms are classified as, Judy will have to help me with the exact technical name, but it's level 2, and female condoms are level 3. It means that, you know, to get any increase, so for example, to expand the female condom use with anal intercourse, for example, the level and the number of studies that have to be presented to the FDA have to be more rigorous to have that expanded FDA approval. Whereas for the level 2 devices, such as the male condom, they don't need as rigorous studies to be done. And also it means that it was approved based on sort of grandfathering it in, based on sort of population data that has proven its use. But also, you know, when the male condom was first released, there was no FDA approval in the first place. So they were trying to come up with a system of some sort to get things people were already using that were already out on the market sort of under some sort of structural guidance and also evaluations for example of the safety as far as the actual components of the condom, the manufacturers, how looking at strength of the condom and looking at whether or not these devices were actually doing what they were marketing themselves as. Because the female condom is a level 3, it actually requires more rigorous studies to prove that. Judy? Okay. Hope that answered the question, Rob.
That does. And then Paul is asking about the distribution of the condom in high-impact areas in Southern Africa. How has that been received? How is how has that been going for you, getting it out into other areas globally?
Mm-hmm. So I really, this is Judy. I didn't talk about our global work. I really focused my presentation on what's going on in the U.S., but we do have a worldwide presence, and South Africa and other areas of Southern Africa, such as Malawi, uptake is very successful, and brand identification is also very important to a lot of communities there. They know our name, they know our brand, they know our product. So some competitors are coming into those communities without a lot of success because trust is a big issue in many communities around the world, and they want a product that they've known and that's been around for 20-plus years. And so, yes, there's a lot of success in uptake of FC2 in sub-Saharan Africa, period, but in South Africa. We do, if you go to the website, which was provided on the site, there is a link for our global efforts, and if you click on that, you can learn more about what we're doing in Central, South America, and worldwide, especially in light of the recent discussion about the prevention of the Zika virus.